Alright, so after a little bit of problems that I've been having with my microphone where it cuts out a little bit and, people don't like that too much. I don't like it too much because, you don't hear everything, stuff like that. I've decided to try it without any kind of noise filters on it and see if it really does affect anything. But today we're going to be checking out a request from Necromancer Arthur, and this is Ghazghkull Mac Uruk Thraka explained by an Australian. Now, Ghazghkull is one of those little pieces of fungus who is a rather entertaining backstory. Eventually I'm going to do a 5-ish on him. It's going to be a lot longer than a 5-ish, I'll tell you that right now, because there's a lot of stuff about Ghazghkull. Essentially, he had half his head shot off, had a metal plate shoved in his head, and became a prophet of Gork and Mork. Orcs. In any case, let's get into it. Here we go.
G'day guys and gal. Happy October, the time of the month where all my special, and I mean that in a bad way, fans spam my DMs demanding orc videos.
Yes.
Well, I am nothing if not a slut to the will of my viewers. So today we are checking out the legendary Ghazghkull Maruk Thraka. The orcs are an interesting bunch. They are both simultaneously everyone's favorite punching bag, but are also technically winning the setting through the sheer fact that they are having the most fun out of everyone.
Pretty
the
much.
People who play orcs are always very unique. A mate of mine who just had his MMA debut and has a stunning girlfriend has an army of Bad Moon orcs that are beautifully painted. I've heard stories of the orc player in people's friendship groups always being like a crazy wild card, from being like a hot chick all the way to a billionaire tech investor. So it is a shame that their main man, Ghazghkull, isn't treated with a whole lot of respect in the lore. We are told he is this Giga Chad prophet of Gork and Mork, and yet he always seems to get kinda clapped, with his arch nemesises not even being that top tier. Like yeah, Ragnar Blackmane and Sebastian Yarrick are awesome characters,
yes,
but the fact that they are the match for the #1 orc in the galaxy instead of, let's say, a chapter master or even Gilliman is a bit unfortunate. Especially when we saw the beast manhandle Vulcan and nearly destroy the Imperium, as well as the fact that we know Krorks used to exist. Before we get started though,
the War of the Beast series should not have existed. I'm just saying, it got kind of ridiculous.
As I said last week, there is only like one more box of the 2022 cosplay calendars. Obviously, as they are out of date, I'm running a 60% off discount, just so we can get into those who haven't seen what 12 hot naked people wearing Battle Mace 40 million cosplay looks like, instead of just like throwing them in the bin. I've had a few people be like, but Majorkill, now the shipping costs cost more than the actual calendar.
Ooh.
Yeah, no shit. Just because I run a discount doesn't mean my post office is like, oh, Majorkill, my man, that's so generous of you. Because of that, we're also going to run 60% off.
Right.
I'd see it more as the product becoming so cheap that the shipping is more expensive rather than the shipping being overpriced. I mean, it's literally $10 USD worldwide shipping, no matter how many of the calendars you buy.
Right.
Good luck finding another company that does worldwide shipping that cheap. Today we're going to the life of Ghazghkull Uruk Thraka.
I do a lot of shipping of stuff, and I can tell you that it is really, really expensive at times.
How he came to be the #1 orc, what he's done with his power, and what his overall goals are, as well as the obvious fun stuff he's done in between. Let's get into it. Ghazghkull's origins are about as humble as they get. A rank-and-file orc boy for an unknown semi-feral tribe on a backwater world, which had been having orc civil wars for thousands of years. The Imperium was studying the orcs closely, realizing that if enough orcs were allowed to jerk off for enough time, eventually a war boss would emerge who would pheromone the fuck out of the orcs, creating a war which could end up being a massive pain in the ass. As such, they began to watch orc-infested worlds that they hadn't yet scheduled for purging, to get a head start whenever it looked like an especially spicy orc was about to emerge. The orcs on Ghazghkull's world discovered one of these human outposts, and they tried to Zerg rush it.
Right.
Ghazghkull was in one of these attacks, and in one of its opening volleys, the Imperial auto turret scored a headshot on Gaz, blowing out a chunk of his brain and knocking him on his ass. Now 900,000 out of 1,000,000 times, this is fatal, even for an orc. Out of those remaining 100,000 times, 99,999, the affected orc would become severely retarded. The one remaining time, they get an extreme hypophany, gain a direct link to their gods, get gigaloaded with orc testosterone, and become the most powerful orc in the galaxy.
Yes.
Ghazghkull was that 1 in 1,000,000. He got back up, holding his head together, and was able to return to his clan and get medical attention in the form of wires, bionics, and a squig to put his head back together.
He's not exaggerating.
So obviously mad respect from the start. Now one of the two things could have just happened. Either Gork and Mork saved Ghazghkull as they saw his potential, or he was so lucky and tough that it got Gork and Mork's notice. I'm inclined to believe the second, as it's not like Gork and Mork to actually favor or save certain orcs, especially ones that hadn't yet proven themselves.
Extremely
Either way,
correct.
regardless if Gaz was actually chosen or not, his self-belief was like a supernova. He genuinely saw himself as the prophet of Gork and Mork and the one to lead the Mega War, the Ragnarok. This power of self-belief made him so obscenely
The sheer fact there's such a thing called the Ragnarok and it's still in the lore just makes me laugh.
Powered that he was instantly able to bludgeon a Deathskull's warlord to death with his bare hands, despite eating a massive volley of point-blank machine gun fire. A volley that didn't actually hit, as Ghazghkull had pretty much summoned a literal plot armor-powered force field around himself created from his own confidence. Ghazghkull then spent an hour beating the shit out of fellow orcs until they recognized him as their new leader. It's a crude yet effective political system.
Yes.
Combining his self-belief and the fact that he had just crumped a shitload of orcs, Ghazghkull's white energy exploded, making him grow larger by the minute. Ghazghkull then began crumping the other orc clans on the planet one by one, sometimes through sheer girth and punching power, however other times he had to employ his newfound genius, such as when he had to catch the elusive and cunning Bad Moon's clan. By predicting the wind and setting fires accordingly, he was able to use the smoke to mask his army's movements, whilst also getting the speedy red evil sons to help him catch them. Eventually he was able to end the skirmish, bring them to battle and beat them into submission. Another one of these rival war bosses was so resilient that Ghazghkull had to cut his head off twice before the war boss submitted. Yes, not died, submitted. Orcs can glue their heads back on, which Ghazghkull would find a useful trick down the track. In only 6 years, Ghazghkull had conquered a world that had been infighting for nearly 10 millennia. To reward Ghazghkull, Gork and Mork spat a space hulk out of the warp that was capable of taking his new massive wah to the far reaches of the galaxy. However, Gork and Mork don't give things out for free.
No, they don't.
The space hulk was infested with a massive demonic army, an army big enough to wipe out entire worlds. Ghazghkull led his billion-strong orc war against the space hulk, where they fought demons of every god, soul grinders, demon engines, greater demons. Shit was wild. Meter by meter, the orcs pushed the demons back until Ghazghkull found the warp rift that they were spilling out of. He shot it, nothing happened. He slashed it with his power claw, nothing happened. He said, "Alright, fuck this shit," and headbutted it. Now, according to science, logic, reason, and law, that headbutt should have done nothing. If anything, it should have just blown Ghazghkull's head off. But Ghazghkull doesn't give a fuck about facts and logic, hence that headbutt shut the warp rift. Checkmate, Ben Shapiro. The newly captured Space Hulk was full of fun technology that the orcs were able to repurpose, giving them a massive technological advantage over any other orcs in the galaxy. They now had teleportation tech, force field tech, new hardened metals.
And oh my god, was it used to glorious effect that was completely stupid, senseless. Oh god. The story of the First War of Armageddon is so ridiculously insane.
Eventually, after a few more demonic incursions, which acted as great practice, the Space Hulk emerged into real space and crash landed into Armageddon. The crash was so intense that it actually altered the climate of the planet and killed a shitload of orcs. However, due to their War power, as well as the Space Hulk's natural sturdiness, most of them miraculously survived. If there was a word to describe orcs, it honestly would be miraculous. Hence, the Second War for Armageddon began extremely suddenly and violently. Within only a few weeks, most of the hives on Armageddon's main continent had fallen, accounting for billions of dead humans.
This is in large part to do with Hermann von Straub. I have a video on him. Go watch that if you want to. I hate Hermann von Straub with a passion. He legitimately one of the biggest wastes of flesh in the Imperium. That was like, I can't remember who said that he was the biggest waste of flesh born within the last 500 years.
The hives were then used as factories to make even more orc weapons, tanks, and gargants. As this world had been mostly peaceful since Angron got clapped on it, they didn't have a massive garrison and were taken completely by surprise by Ghazghkull's full send crash landing. Although human resistance was mounting, it was only until Ghazghkull reached Hades' hive did his momentum come to a crashing halt. Commissar Sebastian Uruk led the defense, and this dude was fucking ruthless. Every tactical move Ghazghkull made was countered by Uruk in equally vicious manners. The Commissar utilized suicide bombers to take out Orc siege equipment, traps to stop the Orc commandos, localized virus bombings, and all kind of messed up stuff. The Orcs begun to respect Uruk, as the dude had even killed a war boss and then taken its power claw for his own, something that should actually be impossible. Ghazghkull couldn't ignore the challenge Uruk had put against him, and despite the best tactical option to abandon the siege of Hades' hive to capture the rest of the planet, he allowed himself to be distracted long enough for Astarte reinforcements to arrive. Although Hades would eventually fall, Uruk had done his job, keeping the Orcs pinned long enough for the Space Marines to kick their asses. As the Orcs were about to get wiped out, Ghazghkull and his elite warriors mysteriously disappeared, seemingly saved by direct intervention from Gork and Mork, who didn't want to see their chosen Jesus suffer a pointless death due to his own orkiness. After all, Tuskar Demon Killer was no longer within their reach, so they didn't want to lose Ghazghkull as well. Now, most of the time when an Orc war boss loses, challenges arise and crump his unworthy ass. This is because they lose confidence, hence lose strength and power. However, a loss wasn't even a remote setback for Gaz. He saw it as a part of Gork and Mork's greater plan. As such, all challenges were easily beaten, and Gaz was able to spin the defeat into a tactical victory, as they had discovered how the Imperium fought and how to beat them.
In essence, he pulled the Abaddon after the first Orc War of Armageddon. Now, there were 3 wars of Armageddon. The first was, of course, with Angron. But, yeah, he pulled an Abaddon there. Basically, when he left the world, he was like, no, wasn't a loss at all. Don't worry about it.
Uruk, however, had actually chased Ghazghkull with a fleet, hellbent on destroying the Orc, which he knew was the orkiest of Orcs. Ghazghkull lured Uruk into a trap and was able to capture him. This was the beginning of their bromance. Uruk outplayed Ghazghkull in Armageddon, Ghazghkull outplayed Uruk here. Ghazghkull felt a strange connection, a rivalry with Uruk that he wasn't ready to let go.
Uruk got ran over by his own Baneblade, called the Fortress of Arrogance, and I can't believe that that's an actual name, an actual thing. First off, you get run over by... I need to know the circumstances of him getting run over, because getting run over by a Baneblade isn't something that you live through.
Ghazghkull tested Uruk and predicted he would pass every test. He threw him down a chute and said he would survive. He did. He threw him in a prison with other humans and predicted he would lead a rebellion that would nearly succeed. That's exactly what happened. It was almost like Ghazghkull's Wa power had leaked into Uruk, which would account for why Uruk was able to use an Orc power claw and remain extremely solid, physically powerful, and determined despite his advanced age. Ghazghkull then let Uruk free to return to Armageddon to prepare for another war. He wanted to fight the best the Imperium had to offer. Proving once again that Ghazghkull is the orkiest of Orcs. This test of Uruk's tenacity also had the added benefit of impressing the other Orcs. By Ghazghkull predicting Uruk's actions and confidently allowing him to leave, it made him seem like he was in total control, hence helped enhance the already obscenely lactating Wa. After decades of preparing, growing his army, upgrading his tech, and enhancing his tactics, Ghazghkull returned to Armageddon for the War of all Wars. Honestly, if it wasn't for Uruk being there, he probably would have moved on, but the two warriors had gained this obsession with each other, and they just couldn't let it go. Ghazghkull is even quoted in saying, "Umis is all weak scum that deserve to get stomped, except for One-Eye Uruk. He knows how to fight," showing the respect Ghazghkull felt for his nemesis. The Third War of Armageddon had begun and, oh yeah, holy shit. Two sides at their absolute peak of readiness and power. The Orcs were hurling captured and modified meteors at the planet as thousands of Astartes took the fight to the Orcs.
There were over 100,000 Astartes minimum on that planet. And just so you guys know, Armageddon is actually old Ullanor. So, Ullanor, where the largest Imperium versus Orc engagement happened during the Great Crusade, was also the site of the largest Imperium versus Orc battles in modern 40k. They just need to cyclone torpedo that planet. It just needs to happen.
A citizen of Armageddon would have sucked donkey balls. The planet was already rough to live on, but now the climate was constantly changing from all the explosions that were constantly rocking the planet. The Third War of Armageddon had quickly become one of the largest conflicts in all of 40k. Billions of Orcs and Guardsmen, around 25,000 Space Marines, dozens of Titans. Shit was wild. The funny part was that capturing Armageddon wasn't even really Ghazghkull's goal. It was just to cause so much destruction and damage that the Orc War would collectively cream its pants and empower Gork and Mork even more. When the war had reached critical mass, i.e. a shitload of people had died, Gork and Mork mind raped.
Sorry. Just now thought about it. I don't think there were that many Space Marines on the planet. I'll have to relook at my numbers. Sorry about that, guys.
Ghazghkull and gave him new orders. Hence he left Armageddon, leaving most of his army to continue the war. Uruk tried to pursue, but Ghazghkull was able to get away in very Ghazghkull style, i.e. full Leroy Jenkins miraculous clutch. Even more miraculously, Ghazghkull's damaged Space Hulk encountered a massive Orc fleet. Ghazghkull then teleported into the command center of the fleet by sheer luck, beating the Orc boss to a pulp, then taking command of the largest Orc fleet in the galaxy, basically giving himself another massive wah. He took this wah to Octarius and decided to get involved with the most bloody vicious war ever, a Greenskin vs Tyranid war. Not only was each side's numbers just obscenely large, but 90% of the fighting took place in melee combat. As the Orcs were about to get overrun, Ghazghkull's fleet arrived and turned the tide. Gaz even got eaten by a Morlock halfway through the battle and had to cut his way out of it. It was about this time that it became obvious that Ghazghkull was a massive fucking tease, entering war zones, making them extremely intense, then blue-balling them for the next battle. He was an absolute slut, not committing himself to a single war zone for very long. Now this does make sense. By creating these obscenely large wars, the war energy in the galaxy would spike, empowering the Orc race overall and pushing Ghazghkull to increase in size and strength. Hence he left the Octarius war for the next battle. In the current setting, Ghazghkull leads a fleet of over 5 million warships, which is, what? That's trillions of orcs. Despite this, however, during the Battle of Krongar, Ghazghkull was decapitated by Ragnar Blackmane, and he did actually kind of die. A talented Orc doc was able to reattach the head to an even bigger Orc body, giving Gaz a large power boost and making him even larger than a Primarch by a pretty significant margin.
And that's just terrifying. That's just terrifying.
Since his rebirth, as you could call it, Ghazghkull has declared that the Orcs have entered the time of Ragnarok, which is a series of apocalyptic wars that would drown the galaxy in war in war. It's funny to think that even though Gaz is now taller than a Primarch, he is still less than half the size of a Krork. Dude has a long way to go before he gets there, but at this rate, he might just manage it, and I am all here for it. Make the Orcs a galactic threat, I say. I'm sick of the fucking Tyranids being the big bad guys. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the cosplay calendar. Although it's outdated, i.e. 2022, I am running a 60% off sale so that the leftovers go to a good home instead of the bin. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more Orky content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Okay, so that is a really good summary of what Ghazghkull Thraka is. Now, he says it different, but everybody's emphasis is on a different syllable, so, hey, who am I to judge? Ghazghkull is just one of those characters. Initially, he was made as a spoof of Margaret Thatcher. That's what he was initially made for. And if you don't know who Margaret Thatcher is, wiki that shit. In any case, Ghazghkull's ascent to power and his subsequent wars that he's been involved in just make him an absolute legend. He is the best known Orc in the entire setting. Probably the next closest to him will probably be the Arch Arsonist and maybe some freebooters, I don't know. But at the same time, I did not know he had that many ships with him right now. That is utterly insane. I need to go and check up on what new things our boy Ghazghkull has been up to. Because if he has that many ships, then he definitely has trillions of orcs. It goes without saying that the orcs are the most populous species in the galaxy, and the only thing that keeps them from taking over is the fact they can't stop fighting each other. If they ever banded together underneath one leader, it would be a threat larger than the Tyranids. They would simply bathe the entire galaxy in war. In any case, like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I'm going to be putting all the Majorkill's links in the description down below, as well as his Patreon. And my own is going to be down there as well. So, hey, if you guys like to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. I appreciate it. Blah, 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 blah. Just me and stupidity. My Discord's going to be down there as well. So jump in and throw a rock at me. And as far as everything else goes, thank you, Necromancer Arthur, for recommending this. And I'm going to shut up because the English language is slipping away from me faster than anything else I've ever seen before. I've been script writing now for the past, I've been script writing, recording, script writing, recording, script writing, recording. That's just been what I'm doing. Back to script writing. I'll catch you guys next time.